Hey everyone, this is the first episode, Point 5 Podcast, for a host introduction here. My name's Kevin Nordio, and yeah, I'll be joining you guys every week. A little bit about me today, just to be able to get the podcast on all the different markets that we're distributing to, and be able to get everything set up with finding new guests. So, mainly a guest introduction today so that I have something to share with people that want to come on. Current status of things, I've been having conversations with about five different people so far. So, we've got some guests lined up that want to come on and talk. A lot of different authors that we're going to be talking to that want their content read and understood and then have a chat about it later. Um, and yeah, it's so today we're just going to be talking about something that's valuable to them and also audience members. But right now, being a new podcast, that's kind of limited. If this sounds a little rehearsed at sometimes, obviously it doesn't sound rehearsed right now, but it's because I just recorded about 40 minutes of this podcast episode, and my computer crashed, as you're going to learn through this episode. Why? And that caused me to change software. So it's kind of a good thing that I did this first recording so that I don't have somebody come on the podcast and then there's audio issues or the whole podcast is lost. So I switched to Riverside, which is a streaming platform that uploads everything uh, while it's recording. So that safeguards between that for that problem. So yeah, every week you should expect one podcast. So that's the benchmark that I'm going to be setting it at. Uh, Recording's probably not going to start next week, though it might. And you can really expect guests from everywhere. This is done on my free time when I'm not working, so it's really just relaxed, you know. I started this podcast to be able to start to learn about more perspectives and hear from more people on things that I wouldn't be clicking on if I was just reading, which I often do on platforms like Medium, and obviously social media is a great place to learn about tons of people. I just found a huge problem running into the same type of content over and over, just getting served up the same thing, and couldn't learn about new people and new perspectives. So I've been able to get by that by starting this podcast project. And yeah, I feel like I have something to offer for listeners, which is of interest to people who want to jump on this podcast with me. When we record this, as you see, just regular video connected through the internet. And then if you are local here in Ottawa, we might be able to set something up there, which would be great. Right now, technology is not great. Setup's pretty basic. Times are obviously available throughout the day, throughout the week. And we're targeting a general audience, people who just want to listen to people who are sharing a normal conversation that leads into what you do. I find it really important to have that available, being that I wasn't able to find stuff that's solid online. Everything has its little flaws, and obviously, I'm not better than all those podcasts on there. But what you do find is the same topics get talked about. Um, if there's new topics, I don't really get the background or this basic conversation that leads up to it. So it's a little hard to follow along. Obviously, really tailored towards those audiences that are searching people up. Those podcasts usually have people on that have been doing media circuits, so on. So it's kind of like a long form interview. Um, People dive into topics. It's pretty interesting. Problem is that it's not a general podcast. It's not a place to have a general conversation that leads into something more. Um, Sometimes it is though. I met I learned about Jeremy Jones on the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm not here to debate what podcast people listen to. I don't really care. I just want to have content to listen to that's interesting. I always found it interesting the gambling perspective of pool. I don't care about the game really. It's not really something that I ever got into as a professional sport. Um, I really enjoy soccer. People call it football outside of North America, and that's what I call it there. Right now we're in North America, so calling it soccer, and that's really what I watch. Um, and I'm really not watching a ton of it. As you'll learn, my schedule is basically painted morning to morning at this point, outside of like slots that I've left open for doing this, uh, to be able to enhance my reading and be able to get things in my, I mean, it's not vocabulary, but in my regimen, my reading list that I'm just not getting uh, by just searching online. I'm definitely not going to run into something solid just by searching around. It's pretty tough to get out of your regular searches. So that's really what we're targeting here. Targeting is a little harsh of a word or markety of a word, but that's what you would be looking for if you're wondering if you want to come on this podcast. As you can see, it's pretty chill. You might have a different environment in this when you come on this podcast, just because I'm changing locations, different places to do the podcast. Right now, I'm in the what is it called, Innovation Hub, or one of the co-work spaces in Ottawa, which is in Canada. So just one of the meeting rooms that they have here, and yeah, you can just come on, have a regular chat. So what you can expect is obviously joining the communities is the best place to get involved with this podcast. Slack and Discord is both available. You can find both of the invite links under the community tab in the point5podcast.com /community. I believe there's a .html at the end of that just because it's not that fancy of a website. It's just a static website that I set up. But yeah, you can join up there. When you join up there, you can talk to me directly. Nothing fancy. Obviously, share with me what you're doing. I talk to authors, professionals, people with just a story that they want to share. If they need a space to be able to talk, I'm very much in the market of wanting people to be heard, no matter what. And then I want to grow with the audience that gets created from this. So obviously at the start, there's tons of people available. And even as we grow, always want to keep a small perspective on, give tons of opportunities to people to talk. I think that's really important, really cool. This doesn't need to be some huge guest list. Um, you know, People are going to want to hear from specific people if this podcast does well. Um, let's worry about that later, but I'm always going to try to keep slots open for like small voices. I think that's really like trendy, but like forever trendy. Like people always want to give that opportunity to that guy that just has no audience but has something cool. And obviously keeping the bar like kind of low. Like, like why make it such a high bar? Simple conversation, and this person's going to get better. So they're going to get better with their content if they're seeing, the best thing I could do as a podcaster or somebody who's lending a space to people is providing something that is giving somebody a huge opportunity. Like, I don't know if I see that often. There's obviously tons of like recommendations and people that want to have certain people come on and guest on podcasts. And a cool thing would be like having a large audience to me. Like a cool thing for me, sorry, is like having a huge audience and then just having on like somebody that nobody knows about, and somebody who's just on a community on Reddit who's just posting their content, who wasn't writing for that purpose of coming on the podcast, might have never done one before. And let's just hear that person out. I'm just like obviously needing to learn to comment on my gestures, but it's kind of like the shrug. Like, what's the worst that can happen? If something terrible happens, I mean, it's not like I'm going to post it. I don't think that people act that terribly. And and it's not like I'm worried about that either. And I just want to have people on and give people opportunities. Um, I think it's a huge motivating factor for a lot of people. And I'm not discounting that as well. If you're somebody who creates to be able to come on and podcast, that's like a great motivator to producing your best work. If you know you're going to come on the podcast and do an hour talk on whatever subject or thing you're doing, you know, you're kind of producing better content. You know, you're producing something that people really need, and that ties into something that's quite important for up and comers and people who are just starting out. Being able to create something that people want and need. Um, you can you can make creative works, um, but something that obviously targets a target audience. That's in every subject, and just keeping it chill and relax and being able to have these perspectives come on. That's essentially what this is. As you heard, this is not a podcast with like a specific focus. Lots of podcasts exist, either that are like the original podcasts that started, or they are very informative blogs disseminating information, and they're called podcasts. That's cool. That's more of a genre specific uh, dissemination strategy for like a blog that has audio. That's kind of different from this. I would say we're different. We, me, Point 5 Podcast is different because I want to start the conversation at high, and I want to be somebody, want to offer the perspective that I take, where I don't work too hard to understand certain perspectives. This might sound bad, but I don't work too hard to understand certain perspectives that are outside of what I already understand. Doesn't mean I'm not curious. I'm more so curious to hear how somebody's going to explain something. I'm very much a, like, let's call it a believer of if you are talking to somebody who doesn't understand anything, you, and you're able to explain what you're talking about, that you're most likely somebody who's credible. Um, and it's also been a solid way for me to filter out some information that might have been time consuming and not necessary for me. And not that this is a podcast for necessary and hitting hard points all the time that provide me value, but I definitely want to keep this uh, open space. I mean, this space that I'm currently in, nice blank wall behind me. You know, it's a kind of paint the picture. You know, starting from somebody who doesn't know anything about you, and if you do know something about that person, maybe this conversation is just what you've been looking for. It's really hard to replicate conversations with other people, but it's really easy to replicate content that is being disseminated. So if you find like a true crime podcast, I saw that those were big. Um, if somebody's telling the same story, it's pretty hard to deviate away from the content. And it's not like you can change the facts, right? You could explore it in a different way, but you start to get quite limited, as you can hear. It's kind of an adjustment to the same thing. So obviously tons of stuff out there. It's pretty great. I might start another project that is specific like that. Obviously in a topic that interests me. This is just not the place for that. Means that we're gonna have general conversations. You can come on here, and right off the bat, it's open to anybody. You don't have to have a 25-year history of employment for your profession. You don't have to have a publishing deal and have made X number of books. You just need to be somebody who cares about coming on, talking about what you want to talk about, and hopefully you know, hopefully promoting something that's going to be of value to you. Um, this is a great place to do that. You're going to meet people by doing this that are going to want to know where to find you uh, online, obviously. And maybe you have a shop, like let's think of the coffee shop owner who's in Manhattan. I don't know if a conversation lines up there, then you know where to find that person. And you know where to find their business and what helps them. And if I was good to get coffee in Manhattan, I would probably end up going to that person because, I heard a conversation with them. I found them pretty interesting. I get to say hi. That's pretty cool to me. So, yeah, very low standard. That doesn't mean that we're not going to try to reach a large audience. I'd like to do both at the same time. Pretty important to me. I think that's going to open me up to those perspectives that I was starting this for. So you're not going to have that entertainment value, let's say. I want people to have like a super relaxed, chill conversation with me and let them speak for themselves. Let their content speak for themselves, speak for itself. And that's where I kind of come in. So being somebody who will read through an author's book, obviously take somebody who's been writing themselves and also been reading and somebody who knows what's actually interesting and valuable to people. Doesn't mean that your work, your creative work, etc., is not of value. It just means that I don't have to inflate the shenanigans that I do. Um, Obviously, that might happen at some point. I don't know. It's not like I'm going to do that on purpose. It's kind of letting it develop. It's kind of like, how basic can I keep this? Um, there's a lot of value in basic. Or like, how boring can something get? It's actually impossible to make something too boring. If you become ultra boring, you then start to pick up this weird value in there. Sounds like a book being started here. Um, but really, it's about like if you go into a university course, somebody out there is probably saying boring to that. But if you're having somebody who's really interested in what they're saying at the front of a room and starting the conversation like I suggested, very basic, and knows what they're talking about, doesn't have to be some professional who's with a big credential. When we're sitting there, we're not really caring about that. We're caring about something that's being explained in a very solid way, in a way that's taking us into consideration. When we're being presented to, like, that conversation can get really engaging. And it doesn't have to be like flashy YouTube stuff, like even like most I hate the word mainstream and all that because it starts to sound like something that I'm not. Like I'm very we could say commercialized in some ways, but have lived a very private life for a long time. So I'm fine with that aspect. I kind of get a little bored of knowing there's going to be shenanigans when there doesn't have to be. Um, like a conversation at this tone and level, some people might call it monotone. Some people might call it boring. Some people might call it like literally add in like 50 different problems of what I'm doing here. I kind of want to like make my podcast uh, something that is like offering the true value of a podcast, which is like super relaxed. There's no need for that structure. Um, this is offered out there. It's just some voices get really big, has booking schedules that are just packed full of people. And then obviously there's like feeding demand of people who want to get heard. Um, and then there's friends of friends and all that. And all those people are famous, you know, and where's the voices that are tiny that, you know, you don't have to be ultra unique. You could actually be doing a blog on the same topic. We were talking just now about topics on like a true crime podcast. Like I'm kind of just interested to hear about the person who like started one of those, who's like really small and like has a like interesting motivation of like how they're gonna actually like break through, you know, like being there from start to like peak of a career would be pretty awesome. So that kind of like answers what this is about for people who are looking to join this. Um, it's not rushed environment. You can really talk about anything. And I don't really want it to be ultra structured or require anything. Like, if we can make a conversation suck to the point that nobody wants to, like, actually, we're already at that point because there's no audience. But if a conversation can suck to the point where, like, the call just drops, the line's dead, doesn't work, then that's impressive by itself. So, um, I want things published. I want perspectives out there. And I want episodes to be as natural as possible. That being said, that is what I offer on the podcast. You can be somebody who is very structured. Being that doesn't really have to do with like the drama, right? If you are somebody like that, high energy, etc., I'm gonna be the same. I'm actually gonna try to. Because that points out like your personality. I think that's important, you know? Like I'm gonna laugh at it, you know, a little bit. And like that's totally natural because I'm not gonna like adapt myself for that. And that kind of gives people a consistent space that they can come to and listen to stuff. It's a little bit grounded. It's kind of content like you might fall asleep to it, who knows. I might be selling how boring this is. I might even show up on the next podcast and be full of energy. If I am like that, it's for a reason, and let's keep it natural. And yeah, so you can come on the podcast, talk about what you know, talk about something you're thinking about, um, use it as a tool to not to do anything, but use it as a tool for your creative process, your professional work, and whatever you do. Um, could be a value to you. I know it's a value to me to be able to talk. So, and there's a side benefit to me and the podcaster and the listener even is that you know we're able to get our views out there, and for people that are not huge are definitely not going to get onto like one of those mainstream podcasts because either they're like they don't have something that's developed for that. Like it's not like a ready show. I feel sometimes you have to have a full production to do that. Or you need like a large enough audience where like not having a like you need a large enough audience to be seen in some cases, but you also need to have stuff like quite developed because you're hitting like a huge audience. So here is very relaxed. Um, I if like there's a ton of people that want to do this, again, you can find that at point5podcast.com/community.html. To join the Slack, the Discord, send me a contact there. I put all the schedules on right there as I get them. Um, I'm even relaxed with how I do that. Now, I might offer another tool to be able to do calendar bookings and all that when I have a place that has a more consistent schedule. But uh, but yeah, you come on here and there's that expectation of, let's just talk. Like we might even be just like staring. You can just stare at the ceiling, and I got an idea. You know, I want it to be that environment. That is always a value to me as a listener. I want something that's natural. I want to hear Joe Rogan when he's talking about things that are just relaxed and talking about somebody like Joe Rogan. Like there's always this need sometimes to, this is at least what it comes across like, to talk about subjects that are like not edgy. I think that comes naturally. Talk about things that are going to make a splash. I think that's the same thing, but um, like talking about drugs and things like that, we can get into me now a little bit now that you've kind of gotten the feel of the podcast. Um, I'm kind of like a strict person in terms of like what I do. I don't I don't do like drugs. I smoke cigarettes. I don't find that to be like, obviously there's like, I'm not here to claim that I know like health. Um, I also like don't want to like, unless you know something about that, like we don't have to be that podcast that like goes on AI and starts debating those things. I don't think that that's something that should be like, it's great to be fully informed about like drugs, smoking and all that, but we know it's bad, you know. So unless it's like your topic, I am going to steer clear from like giving you basically medical advice or researching into something that I just presume to be bad. I don't really want to explore that just because that's not really what I think makes people thrive. I think people are like really creative, really good at what they do professionally. And I think that there's not enough channels and discourse that gives a space where people can be understood for what they do. And a lot of that I find gets filled with content that's not like allowing a space for you to be understood. So, interesting fact about me there is that I'm kind of a boring person. Um, it's also what makes like it's easy for me to talk about this podcast and myself for one episode, but if I was to do this on my thoughts in general today, like some people do, I would not be able to do that. I feel like I constantly don't have a lot going on to share, which opens the door for people to talk about themselves. I like talking about other people. I like other people being made to feel like they're very important because most likely they are and they just don't know it, you know? Um, I have very low standards when it comes to like what I'm interested in. Um, I just don't, I don't think conversation needs to be a hard thing. I also don't think that you need to go out and spend a whole lot to make something interesting. Like, look at this. Like, I'm using a little tiny Laberia Laberia mic. I think that's not how you say it. And a computer that basically just completely died on me. Like 25 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago. And as I'm saying this, it's literally like almost crashing on me right now. And hopefully that doesn't, I'm not going to post it if it's showing up like that, but yeah. So yeah, I gravitated towards accounting when I was in school. I still am in school again. Something to start to dive into, like how I'm not somebody who has all these flashy credentials or achievements. I'm kind of like an example of like what not to do maybe for a lot of people. Um, I will always give you genuine advice when it comes to like boring things like educating yourself. Because I have like a real example of why you want to be in school, why you want to take work serious. Starting your business is great. Starting hobbies is great. I will always advocate for you to do that in moderation and in places where it makes sense. Um, Online is a very, very loud market telling you to do a lot of things. And, almost in the tone of my voice, as I said, this is not something that is presentation ready. I don't feel like everything online needs to be this huge presentation. If anything, it allows for the antithesis of that. People being bored and doing what they do online allows for the opportunity for people just to stumble into really interesting content. Um, that's like a huge benefit of online. Definitely a advocate of why SEO would be important for online is because you can find stuff on like a random page that you find useful. So it doesn't have to be perfectly marketed content every time. That has a downfall, obviously, if you're somebody who is taking this more seriously. I'm doing this kind of out of my personal benefit with the backsplash of this being something that's healthy if it takes off. I may have talked about this, I may have not, because I just recorded another episode of this, as I said, so bear with me if I've already mentioned this. But I am seeing this as a very healthy little economy between creators, listeners, and podcasters like myself. Some economies online are very one sided in terms of like open a Shopify store, tons of people wanting to sell them, tons of people wanting to tell you what to do, tons of people who want to make them, sure. That might have gone down in popularity because of the last part. The last part is that like not a lot of people use your small shop. The perspective being small and your conversation being interesting could also be from the same person that's tried to start up one of these shops. You sucking at something and having failed at something could probably be a really interesting story for other people to hear. And you might suck at it because you are like me and you need to jump on to like either start a podcast. I can make that recommendation. I could even tell you how I've gotten guests and things like that because the economy's healthy in this space. We all benefit from each other. Listeners benefit from more people podcasting, providing the same person on a different platform, just being talked to in a different way. It's always going to create different conversation. People who are podcasting as guests are benefiting from more people. You're definitely not taking time away because my schedule can change at any time. Um, I can do tons of interviews a week. And I benefit from it because when you are podcasting the same person, people might get interested in that person and then find my podcast. There's an interesting little thing there where it's like you doing well with the same person or having found that person first might even introduce it to me. um, but definitely helps me be seen. You know, I'm not just alone here talking to people that aren't being seen elsewhere. So it's a huge opportunity. You know, you might even just listen to the people that are on my podcast and then reach out to them. They might enjoy that. You know, you could definitely reach out to them on my community. Um, See, I'm open to things like that. There's no like huge requirements around here. If there's problems, like I'll just fix the places where they break. I'm not going to put any like do not advertise your podcast in my community. There's just no reason to fix things that aren't broken completely. And I chose the right space to where there shouldn't be things that break like that. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm an accounting student. I'm an accounting student that went through school for 2 years. I started off in social sciences, political sciences, and psychology, and kind of had enough of it for my own reasons that I'll probably just save for another podcast that I do with somebody else if they want to poke and prod into that. And um, I changed over to accounting, and I always enjoyed how I can do the same thing for any business. That's kind of what attracted me to that. It's very much in tune with the way I've talked about this podcast. It's a space where it's always going to be very much the same. Different people, same thing. Same deal. You come in, you kind of know how to like talk in terms of like the start of the conversation. And then like as things progress, then it gets unique. But there's always that like stable similarity between them, and that allows us to get better. Like that'll in the case of like accounting, that's a great opportunity for me to get really really good at like core skills. If I was thinking of it in terms of like a spreadsheet, I can build out that one spreadsheet instead of having lots of them. That's very attractive to me. I also enjoy programming, so that might have had a big influence on that, to where you build a core piece of software that is being nailed by tons of your tons of applications, like an API. If you know about computer programming, it's basically something that's being used by lots of software, and it's the same thing. And it's just that developer is focusing on building that thing into something that's great. So I enjoy that. Um, and so that's why I gravitated towards accounting. Outside of that, I'm a writer. You can find me on medium.com. Um, as you can see, I keep short about myself and I try to provide value that other people are looking for. In the case of this podcast, not really a podcast, but introduction to myself, it's providing value that I know can be a value for other people to assess, like who I am and like the vibes that they'd be walking into um, on this podcast. Um, to like give that value to like future guests. So when I find something that is valuable to me, for me to remind myself of something in the future, so that when I wake up one morning and I'm just like not feeling it, I just read through my own stuff. That's what my writing is. So if you enjoy stuff that's like valuable in like shaping your mind in a certain way to focus for the day and like be productive, that's where you can find me at. It's Kevin Nordio on Medium. You can find my links just by searching me up. I believe I have a links page and all that. And you can find all this stuff in the community that I've published on the website. I already mentioned that Slack and Discord has those invite links that are always there. And yes, other than that, podcasting, I just want to get introduced to more content. I'm an avid reader. I don't know if avid is the right word there, stepping out of my vocabulary there, but I read a lot. I just don't know what to read. I have a way of doing that. I just feel like I'm not connected like I could be if I was doing that over podcasts. And I'm definitely not stepping out of my comfort zone when I'm clicking on something. Like I might have the right filters for finding something that's new, I just don't want to explore that myself. Um, I want somebody to explain to me first. Um, if you're talking about something that I don't even want to read, which I'll probably try to force myself to read it and get interested so that we can try to have a conversation about it. Um, but just explain it to me. Like, as I mentioned, being a laid back podcast, or that could almost be the name. It's like defines me. It's like laid back, no expectation podcast. Obviously can't change the name now, but point five, I love math and logic. Something about that was interesting about me. It also explains uh, this podcast, though. It's that I don't want to step in the way and create false value. I don't want guests to feel that way. I want people to feel like we are allowing ourselves to be boring enough for a topic of conversation to come up where me and that person are actually engaged and actually interested in it. We're not just disseminating information that's needing to get put out. There's time for that. There's time for saying who you are and what you promote. But when it comes to podcasting, me and you are gonna have a conversation as a future guest over Slack or Discord, and there's gonna be a conversation that when that conversation question gets asked, I'll know it right away that we should just jump into a podcast and let's get that scheduled and let's start there. Let's talk about what question came up for me, and then let's let that guide it. And the rest is really like, when in doubt, just teach me about something. Teach me about like what I don't know. I'm very open to that. I'm like never gonna say like some things I'll know. I will also want to be contradicted in certain areas, but like just teach me about it. Like I don't want to. I want to be the dumb guy in the room. I want other people to look good. I have my benefits on this podcast by hosting people. So let me be the person who doesn't know anything. Let me be the boring guy. Let me be the guy who doesn't have things set up right. There's like a minimum standard you're gonna find on this podcast. It's not perfect, but the audio is gonna be all right enough, and the video is gonna be all right enough to where you can listen, and that's what I can provide to listeners and also guests. And the rest is really like we find that question, we go off with it, and point five like math and logic. Uh, when you have something, you can create a paper in college that's dressed up, but it's just not providing value. There might be something that's very boring, but it's providing you a lot of value. And it's so valuable and interesting and being explained in like a really good way that you get drawn in. There's no need for quick talk. There's no need for, it almost sounds like TikTok, but there's no need for, which is pretty fitting. There's no need for quick talk. There's no need for like just overzealous, I think is the right way to say it. There's no need for that. Syncing the conversation to beyond boring to interesting is where I want to try to get this. So I'm on my way to work now. I work in the kitchen. That's the last point I'm going to make. Training as a chef right now, and I work as a dishwasher. And most likely moving up to line cook. So nothing impressive for me to show. I'm not like a Michelin chef, definitely not. I'm not even like a chef. I work in the kitchen, really enjoy like dishwashing is the same as accounting, same thing in every place. Just get really good at it. You can listen to like the timing on a dishwasher. If someone needs a job, learn to listen to the timing on a dishwasher. It opens and closes, obviously. The amount of time that it runs is something that I got interested in. Like, it's again, like, I'm like boring like that. But I find that that's like interesting to know. If you work in a kitchen, like, you get bored no matter what, no matter what job you do. I found that like you'll always get bored. In the kitchen though, like you kind of keep like the dishwasher as like your timer. And then you're kind of like beating it, right? Like to beat that thing, you need to like literally stack your like like your pot, like your pots basically, or your crates. I actually forget the term that I even use for that. Trays. It's not trays. Every racks, literally every place calls it different. But you stack those, and you have to stack them like with the same thing so that you can run there and back to put things away. Very very boring, but something that's interesting to me. So I've got to get running. I actually got to make it to work in 10 minutes. I work at a place like both places I work at are in downtown Ottawa. 5-star places. You're going to see that I'm talking quick because I'm trying to finish this off. I'm literally looking at this time. But 5-star place, or like basically 5 stars. One place is like really, really fancy. The other place is like very, very fancy. One place is fancier than the other. And yeah, just lots of experience, 4 years, 5 years as a dishwasher, and training in another program outside of school as a chef. That takes up all my time. Going to be transferring to a school here in Ottawa to finish up my accounting degree, and that's about it for me. Uh, every other piece of time that I have is reading content, understanding people, and podcasting them. And that's what you're going to get on here. So thank you very much for listening. I got to get going here. I'm probably going to be walking in a little after when I should. Probably not actually, but the benefits of working right next to where you are. And yeah, that's it about me. So I hope that you join the community. Um, Again, it's point5podcast.com/community.html. Join those Slack and those Discords, and then contact me, and then just start sharing stuff. I'll ask questions if you don't share it, and then we'll get started from there. And then a conversation will develop naturally. Don't worry. I'll just start reading, and then I'll get questions. If not, then I'll just say, just start teaching me about this stuff, and then we'll get into it. I have tons of availability throughout the week. I can like I'm moving to another space to do this stuff, um, to do this podcast, and I'm gonna have like tons of availability, like reasonable times, like late night stuff. So yeah, let me know, and I look forward to guests enjoying this podcast and also being able to provide you an opportunity to be heard and to provide you a space that works for you. So thank you very much for listening to the first episode of Point 5 Podcast. This is a very official ending, but thank you very much. Have a good day.